congregation may be seated. I am not one of those people who has ever been into genealogy, or really history for that matter. It's just not ever been my thing. My brother, however, has always been into it. He really likes Civil War history, he really likes to delve into family history. You name it, that has always fascinated him. Well, the other evening, my brother happened to be in town visiting from Ohio, and so he came over to my house for dinner. And he's just been to my house in Maryland one other time. So he sort of, did the walking through thing to see what I had done since I, bought the place. And I talked a lot about the renovations that I had done and all the paint colors that I had, recently painted. And I also talked about how much work the yard was and how much I loved the front porch. So I was sort of giving him a lowdown on, the house. And he did listen and admire, but mostly as he walked through the house, he looked at all the pictures that I had put up. I don't really ever notice the pictures that I have hanging on my walls anymore. They've just sort of become part of the house. And he laughed as he looked at what we called the naked baby pictures. All of my kids had naked baby pictures taken when they were about 4 months old, which at this point in their lives, they want to crawl under the sofa when they look at them. But I also have many old pictures, black and white ones that are printed on that really thick paper. And some of you know what I'm talking about, those heavy photographs when going to get your photograph taken was a special occasion and you didn't just snap a picture on your iPhone. Well, I have many of those. And he paused quite a lot when he was looking at those photos. And there were some that he had, of pictures of when he and I were little that he claimed he had never seen. Although I just think he has a short memory. Well, at some point he said, I need to ask Mom for some of these really cool old photographs because I want to make a wall in my house that has all these pictures on it, which is what my parents have. They have this wall of family history hanging in their house. Well, I volunteered to scan some of the photographs for him, and as I did that, I pulled out a few more old photographs that I have from a pile, and they are pictures of people that are somehow related to me. I really have no idea how they're related to me. I got them when my grandmother passed away, and she had all these pictures, so I took some of them. And so I asked him if he wanted some of those pictures too, even though I didn't know who they were. And he said to me, "It doesn't really matter if you know who they are. It just matters that they were. Family matters, and lineage matters, and promise matters." Now, I say that knowing that it's true and that those facts can be painful. Just the thought of family ties can stir up a lot. Some of us have severed family ties, and some of us don't know who our parents are. And some of us have taken the photos off the walls because the memories they depict are too painful to look at. But the truth of the matter is, those people and feelings are part of who we are regardless. They have left some mark on us, because as my brother would say, they were, and they can't be erased. Well, I thought a lot about Abram's life and family and how that must have impacted his faith. And what, if anything, was so very profound about Abraham's faith. Because Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all trace their lineage back to Abraham. Abrams was essential to their understanding of relationship and dependence on God in all three of those religions. Well, I do believe that Abram was a man of extraordinary faith, but maybe not for the reasons that we typically point to. Mostly, I believe his faith was extraordinary because faith itself is extraordinary. Clinging to hope when there is seemingly none is extraordinary. Praying for strength when all strength is gone is extraordinary. Believing a miracle is possible when all other signs say otherwise is extraordinary. But is that so different from what your faith can do, or mine? Is Abraham's faith really so different? In some ways, his faith is very, very ordinary. It is tied to his family, and tied to the events of his life, tied to every single place he's ever walked. Because this is a man who is 75 years old, and he has had a lot of people, a lot of places, and things go on in his life. So this morning, we're going to do something a little bit different here as we talk about Abraham. I do this, I have to say. So Abram and Abraham, they're the same person, and I always go back and forth because he gets his name changed, so just bear with me, I try and keep it straight. So sometimes people say to me that when they hear a children's sermon, right, that it's easier to understand than a grown-up sermon, which I get, but I don't think it's necessarily the simplicity of the children's sermons. I think it's more that sometimes it's helpful to have an image or something tactile, something to grasp onto, and that reminds you of what that message was about. So we're going to do a whole group object lesson this morning. So I brought this skein of yarn, and what I'm going to do first is I'm going to tie it back here to the baptismal font. The reason I'm doing that is because we started here in the book of Genesis, where all creation starts, and the promise was, and the reality is, that God's Spirit hovered over the water, and that all of creation sprang forth from that. So in some ways, we're going to start from the beginning. We have to start from there. So what I'm going to do, and you're going to have to sort of participate as I'm talking, I'm going to give this yarn starting here to Don, and he's going to pass it along, and you just need to pass it along to people. When we get over here at some point, you're going to have to cross over the aisle, and everybody needs to be holding the yarn. We're not cutting it, all right? So you're just passing along, okay? And just keep doing it. No worries. I'll guide you as we go along. So, as you're doing that, part of the reason I started thinking about this was because I was wondering, so one of the great questions in confirmation is, who was an important person in your faith development and why? Okay, so I was wondering if Abraham's confirmation teacher asked him, who was an important person in your faith development and why? What he would have said. So maybe he would have said Terah, who was his father, who we don't really ever hear much about at all. Or maybe he would have said Lot, who was his stepbrother, who actually ends up with the better piece of land. You know, Abraham's the one we remember, and Lot gets the better piece of land. So talk about sort of a participation of faith and humility by allowing your sibling to have, to win, to get the better piece of land. Or maybe he would have named his mother, as instrumental in his faith. And we don't actually know what Abram's mother's name was. Judaism names her Amatale, but I sort of liked that we don't really know her name for sure, because it allows me to imagine what she might have been like, this woman, this mother of Abram, who is the father of so many faiths. But however Abram would have answered that question, the truth is, in one way or another, all those people influenced his faith. And it matters that those people were. So who are your people? You have to answer that confirmation question again today. Who was instrumental in your faith? Who are your people? See, Abraham knows that lineage is important. He knows that lineage is important, and he knows it so much so that he gets angry with God. Because Abram gets angry. He goes to him and he's like, what have you given me? Well, God's already given him a whole lot of stuff. God's already provided. God's already seen Abram through famine. God's already forgiven Abram and Sarah for their indiscretion. God has already been with him through battle, and God has already given them land. It is not that God has not provided for Abram. So why is he angry? He's angry because of this. That yarn. What if it stopped? Right now we're at the back. What if it stopped? Right there. What then? Is it all for naught? All of you are holding that string for nothing, and it will stop back there. That can't be. And that's why Abram's so angry. Because his faith tells him that this cannot be all there is. That there must be more than just land and security. Abraham probably wasn't thinking. So who am I going to pass my faith on to? And I'm certain he wasn't thinking, got this great 401k I've been investing in. Who's going to get that? Now, Abraham remains childless and is probably thinking something more along the lines of, what was the point? And what will become of me? Because Abraham understands that God has not done the one thing necessary for future. God hasn't provided legacy. There is only lineage. And lineage without legacy doesn't work for Abram. It doesn't work for God either. It doesn't stop abruptly. Legacy isn't just that something of us will continue on. No, see, as we sit here, we are God's legacy. Something God has placed here to continue on. So, when you share a graced moment of your life with us, any of you, it speaks to that barrenness that's in all of us, and it revives our faith. Or when you share a time of anguish and sorrow, it calls forth love from the depths of us, as we all sort of hear that whisper that we often say in hospital rooms, that faith is the only thing that will carry us through. When we really sit here, bound to one another by faith, unable to really move without knowing that the other person around you is moving right now, we begin to remember how truly connected we are. Because it is purely by the grace of God that we have gotten this far. On the face of it, Abraham birthing entire nations cannot be true. How could it possibly? Through just a few children. And yet, look around. How could it not be true? When our own hearts bear such powerful witness to what the legacy of love can produce. Because we are not talking bloodlines here. We're talking love lines. God sees to it that there is always more to unravel. And I do love where Mike placed the rest of that yarn. So there, if you just have to look back there, there's the rest of the skein of yarn back there at the point of creation, ready to unravel more. And that is how it always is with God. Abraham and Sarah and you and me, we do have this fragile, holy, and mysterious faith that promises that what God has done, He will continue to do, birthing legacies of love for this generation and the next. Because it does matter that you are, and it does matter what you will be, and it will matter that you were to all those stars that are yet to be hung in the heavens.